Hi, Chelsea. Thanks for being on my podcast today.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and have this conversation with you.
I know I'm really excited. The holidays are just around the corner, and I think grief is always hardest when there's a loss around the holidays or when the holidays are approaching. So I love that you wrote this book called Now That She's Gone. It's a beautiful, beautiful book about the loss of your mom. And just it's honest and raw, and I really enjoyed it. And I think this will help a lot of people that either have lost a parent or a mom specifically, but just going into the holidays. I just love our conversation to help those walking through grief. So I'd like to hear just a little bit about your story. Tell me about your mom and how I know it was cancer, correct?
Yes. Yeah. My mom in 2017 showed up at my house right before Valentine's Day. She was
Mm.
57 and I had a couple of young children. I was a teacher, loved life, was kind of naive to loss and hardships. And she sat us down and told us that her cancer had returned and that she had 2 years left to live.
Oh my
And
goodness.
you can imagine the punch that
Mm.
felt like on my soul and my heart, but it was even a harsher reality that she only made it until July. So from
Oh, I'm
February
so
until
sorry.
July 3rd, she passed. And so through that, it was just a very big web and labyrinth of grief and loss and heartbreak and really just trying to figure out what life was going to be like because this was not something that obviously we planned for. It was definitely something that we were praying wouldn't happen. And so through losing her, it really just made me understand the fragility of life and then also the power that you have from now you have to build something with your own life. You can't stay stagnant. So
Mm.
it was just a lot of trouble and trauma and learning how to get through it.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine that conversation, like how hard that must have been for your mom to say that. And then for you to just like sit there and think, wow, my mom, like I only have 2 years left. And then honestly, that wasn't even less. But like,
Right.
oh, my heart just broke when you said that. And so I know there's others out there that are either the one saying it as a parent or receiving it as a child that their parent has cancer or they have something that they're fighting and they know that maybe their time on earth is limited. I remember my friend, I personally still have my mom, but my dear friend Jeannie, and I write about her in my book, Depth, and it's one of my great heartbreaks that we lost her. But I remember when she told me she had cancer and it was only 4 months later, too. And it's just one of those really hard conversations. And you have a quote in your book that just captivated me. It says, the person who once watched you as you took your first breath is now lying still, taking her last. And I sat there and I thought, what a picture. Like, yeah, your mother's the first one to hold you and see you as you take your first breath. And now you're sitting by her bed and watching her take her last. And it was just a really profound statement. And so I know relationships with moms. I love that you have a section in your book where it's called When It's Complicated, because I know some people, it's not this perfect relationship and there's estrangements or there's difficulties. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But I know you had a great relationship with your mom. So tell me how you did with the grief, like something real practical. If someone's sitting here right now going, this is my reality, either my mom just passed or my mom is passing soon, I know that this is going to happen. How did you walk through the hard emotions and the grief? Do you have anything that was helpful?
I think the first thing is just knowing that however you are processing and comprehending this profound loss is okay.
Mm.
That your relationship is so unique. My sister and I both lost our mother, but we both grieved in completely different ways. And I think the first thing is just really giving yourself permission to say, okay, I'm going to feel this, I'm going to figure this out. And then I'm going to go forward in whatever way suits me best. And you'll find that some of the friends you thought would be there won't be there. Some of the traditions
Wow.
you thought you'd hold on to, you don't. They don't fit you anymore. And so I think the first thing is realizing that you are different and you're going to be different. And that's okay because the people that are going
Mm.
to be in your life that are meant to still be there are going to love the new version of you, just like they loved the old version of you. And for me, that was the first step is knowing, I am different and that's okay. I have to learn how to love this version of me and how to walk forward with it. And I don't
Mm.
think there's really, the best advice is just to honor yourself. There really
Yeah.
is no good advice in grief other than find your people and your support system. And if you don't have them, search for places online or a community that honors the pain that you're experiencing because it's just profound and honestly life changing, no matter if it's a parent or a friend.
Right. Did you do a grief support group or see a counselor or anything? Did that help? Was any of those helpful?
I did. I went to a therapist because I wanted to be proactive with my grief. I knew I was on the floor struggling with, raw emotion, praying prayers that probably couldn't be, answered anymore. And so I knew I needed help, but I also wanted to be proactive because I did have young children and I
Yes.
wanted to make sure we knew how to equip them to handle this loss because I didn't feel equipped. So how was I supposed to, manage mine and theirs? And so we had a wonderful therapist that just taught us some things that seem so simple, but yet really helped us understand, how to explain grief to children and to say, it's okay if we're sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to ask about them. You won't hurt mommy's feelings, keep talking about her. And so just all of those things really were, helpful in the process. And I always encourage people to, find those resources that you have because sometimes there's a lot of shame behind that, but really
Right.
it sets you free in ways that you didn't know. It lifts some of the weight off.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, there is no shame seeing a counselor. I think it's so important. I went and saw a counselor through all my heartbreaks. She helped me get through the loss of my friend Jeannie. I was going through a divorce just 2 years before. So, yeah, I had to troubleshoot a lot in there and just grief in general. Like, why God? So many questions. And I love that you have a section in your book. It's actually my favorite section in your book. Okay. It's like, so powerful. So, I mean, I could have talked about every single one in this section, but I thought, I don't want to only highlight one section, but it's called Faith, Fleeting, and Found. And first of all, that's so beautiful because right away, like your faith is kind of fleeting after you're walking through something hard. It's like, God, what are you doing? Why is this happening to me? And then I love that it said it was found. But in this section, this was one of my favorite ones you wrote. It's so you title it For You, God, Wouldn't It Be Easy? And again, as I related to the loss of my friend, I remember like praying, like, God, you can heal her. I know you can. So this is what you wrote. Let me say your words. They're better than mine. Here it goes. Please heal her, Lord. Please prove these doctors wrong. Please take away the disease that is ravaging her body. For you, God, wouldn't it be easy? And then you listed something else, and wouldn't it be easy? And oh my gosh, as I read that, it just resonated with me. Like that was what I was asking God to do. Like, I know you could do it, God. I know you're capable. And I love the way you worded it. It was really beautiful. And I think in that section, you have so many beautiful raw ones that are just, I don't know. It was my favorite part. I just connected with it so much, Chelsea. It was so good. But I would like us to kind of share some of the truth that happened. So after that one, you wrote another post called Why Doesn't God Heal Everyone? I thought maybe you can share a little bit from that one. I thought that had a lot of good depth to it. You answer some of the why questions, like just share some of your favorites from that section because it was my favorite part.
I love that this is your favorite because for me, it was almost when I was afraid to share with the world because my mom had built such a solid faith in my life. And so when she passed, I felt like I lost her and my faith. And
Mm,
that was a hard thing. So then I felt like I didn't just lose my mom, but I lost a million other things. And one of those was the foundation of everything that I knew. And so it was so hard. But then when I started sharing about my faith journey and how it was challenged, not lost, but challenged, people said, yes, me too. And so
yes.
I love hearing when this part because it's a part that I didn't know existed. I didn't know that some people felt like their faith had been rocked and stolen from them. And so really what these essays are is me finding my way back to God and finding my way back to hope and faith and all those things that I knew I believed in, but grief really shattered those truths for me.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
had to put them back together in a way that made sense for me. So I start, asking God for forgiveness, forgiveness from the anger that I held towards him when, my mom was dying and when she finally passed. And then eventually to, why don't you heal everyone? And then in
Right.
realizing my favorite part of that essay is, and most people don't get to it if they, because it can kind of get an emotion and saying, well, why are you challenging God? But at the end, if you really go to the very end, it says he does heal everyone, but we aren't
Yes.
blessed to see the healing. And I truly, when I came to that realization, it was as if my mom had said to me, oh, sweetheart, I'm healed, but you just can't see
Yes.
it.
Just
And
not on
it,
this side of heaven can we see
yes,
it. We'll see it. Yeah.
yep,
So
that's
good.
exactly right. And so it gave me such a light filled way to look at, to see finally, I spent so many years at the first, several years just in profound loss and heartbreak. And so when it finally was the shift of looking at things from my mom's perspective and seeing the beauty that she was seeing rather than the pain that I was left with, was the most beautiful blessing in all of losing her.
That is so cool. Yeah, it's just so hard. I think that I love that you speak to this because I think that's when so many people walk away from their faith. I love this quote by John Ortberg. It says, if you ask someone when they walked away from their faith, the answer would be suffering. But if you ask them when they grew deepest in their faith, the answer would be suffering. So it's like this suffering is going to happen. We all experience it at some level. What are we going to do with it? Is it going to draw us closer to God and deepen our roots, which is what I love to talk about? I don't know if you can see my book Depth. It's the deep roots. And that's what happened to me. My greatest heartbreak catapulted me to my greatest growth. But other people, that's not the story. They turn their back on God and they walk away. And I think it's okay to have the questions and the doubts and wrestle with God. I love that you said it was challenged, but not lost. That was really profound. Your faith was challenged. I think it's okay for it to be challenged. It's supposed to get challenged and deepened. Like if it doesn't, you kind of keep it the status quo, you know, no, I don't want to say immature faith, but just not depth to the faith, right? And so some of that has to happen through wrestling. So just ask God the hard question. I journaled. Did you do a lot of it writing? I know you obviously wrote a book. So was a lot of your like it was these essays to journaling? Was that how you did it versus verbally?
Yes, yeah, because I realized that grief makes people uncomfortable. Heartbreak makes people
Mm,
uncomfortable. And so to the world, I was showing up with a smile on my face and carrying on and doing the next responsibility. But when I could sit down with my computer and just type it all out, it just felt so true and things that I would have never been able to tell anybody. And at first, I just did it to heal myself. I was just trying to
right.
process things and, really understand what was happening and say those harsh truths that, I feel like the world doesn't really talk about. And then when my husband finally encouraged me, share it. I think other people will relate to this. And it became a beautiful place of just community and grief togetherness.
Yeah, because I think sometimes you feel alone in grief. You feel like I'm the only one feeling like this. No one can understand. And in some sense, everyone grieves differently, so they can't fully understand. But people can understand, like, I'm questioning God. Like, that's something we can understand. Or I have doubts, like, why would God allow this? Or I'm feeling so sad I can't get out of bed. Like, those things we can all relate to. So when you share them, when you're open and vulnerable about it, and then people can say, yeah, I'm feeling that too. And then they don't feel that shame, like you had said. Because I really don't think you need to feel shame with grief. This is something that you loved this person. This is how you're dealing with the loss of that loved person, right? Like God's helping you get through it. But for some people, they just don't want to feel the hard emotions. I love that you said you have to feel them. Like you had to feel the sadness. You had to like tell your kids it's okay to be sad because I think you can't heal unless you feel, and so
100%.
you have to feel it and it has to move through you. And so I love that you had it move through you by writing. I did the same. I was journaling like crazy. I told my kids, burn them when I die. I don't want anyone reading what I wrote because I did get real honest. There was swearing in them at times. I mean, I was mad. I was frustrated. I was hurt, so it's like, get it all out. But God can handle that, right? He'd much rather us come to him with our heartbreak than walk away from him. So I love this section. I think so many Christians struggle with the whys or the I don't understand. And the way you wrote it was just beautiful because we just entered into it through your writing. And I could just sit there and go, that's how I feel. I mean, I couldn't write that well. I just thought like that wouldn't it be easy, God? That one, I mean, I just sat there like, wow. Like I think I could say I said most of these things when I was talking about my friend passing. Like, wouldn't it be easy, God? Like more people would come to Jesus because they would see what a miracle it was. Like, wouldn't that be easy for you to heal her? And then he chose not to. And it was like, what? Like these kids were 9 and 13 when they lost their mom. And I'm still kind of in their lives. I'm like a bonus mom to them. And, it's been, let's see, it was 2016. So 8 years now. And so, they're one's 21, one's almost almost 18, 17. And so they're grown up now, but there's been so much that I'm like, God, they needed their mom. So I still don't fully understand. And that is something I want to ask God when we get to heaven. But I love that you said once the questions will be answered this side of heaven. We'll see the healing the other side of heaven, I should say. We don't always understand it here, but can we still trust God? Can we still lean into God? And can we still say, God, I still want you in my life, even when I don't understand? I think that's what was really beautiful in that section. That's why I loved it so much. And I do think everyone could relate to those questions you were asking. So that's why it was so powerful. So thank you
Oh,
for writing that. It was my favorite part. Okay. The other part I loved, I mean, I loved all of it, but the other really great part for me was the happy days and holidays because man, I remember my first Thanksgiving without my kids when I was going through my divorce. And I remember, the kids' first Mother's Day without their mom and their first Christmas without their mom, the kids that lost their mom, my friend. And it's just hard. Holidays like amp it up, they just
I do.
make the grief what's the word I'm looking for? Deeper, I guess.
Intensified. Yeah.
Intensify. Thank you. That's the word. Okay. So you have this quote in your book. You said, I wish people understood the complexities of grief and how it could have greater power and harshness during the holidays. I wish they knew that even though I smile, I'm hurting and a bit tender. And then you did a whole thing about, I wish they knew. And you shared all these things. I mean, it's so powerful. I wish I could read the whole thing, but can you share a couple of those of what you wish people knew around the holidays? Because I think the holidays are just around the corner. When this releases, it's going to be right before Thanksgiving. I mean, we're coming into that stretch of time where family is so important. And if you've lost a family member, it just hurts deeply. Like you said, it's intensified. So, how can we come alongside and help people in the holidays? And what were some of your other wish statements?
Yeah, I wish that people knew that, we carry this grief with us always, like a scar or a shadow. And so it follows us. We can't leave it at the door. We can't forget about it for a while. And so they have to accept both of us, both the
Mm,
whole version of ourselves and also the parts of us that are a little bit chiseled away and missing. And so I also think people need to, especially when it's fresh grief, people need to understand that it's okay to say no. It's okay not to go to everything right away. It's okay to spend some time alone instead of at every single holiday event. It's okay to find out which things still fit for you. If there are traditions you need to let go of and add new ones, that's okay. Sometimes we
so
think
good.
that, the responsibility from loss can be very overwhelming. And so we really just have to decide what works best for us and our families and our children, and then go from there. And also just, know that we can't be made more sad by you mentioning them. And the holidays are a perfect time to say their names, say their stories,
Yes.
keep their memory alive. You're not going to make my grief any more, difficult or compounded. It's already there. And then additionally, just know that, I always felt like there was this empty space. And so what we say now in our family is that the chair is not empty, because there are things everywhere that will tell you at the holidays there's a chair that's empty, there's a chair that's empty. And so in our family we decided we don't like that. We say that the chair may look empty, but it's simply filled in a capacity that we cannot understand. And so
Wow.
my mom is with us always. We will always keep her memory alive, and we choose to try to find the hope when there is, but also acknowledge it's okay if that day we don't find the hope and we're just a little bit in the sorrow. And so just
That's
having
good.
that acceptance for yourself, your children, everyone else that's going through grief, and just giving them patience. We don't need you to fix us. We don't need you to try to heal our wounds. They cannot be healed. Just let us, sit with us in our light as much as our dark, and love us as we are.
Oh my gosh, you said so many good things. Okay, I love that you said talk about the person, use their name. A lot of times people are nervous when someone's lost someone to bring that person up, but I found it was just the opposite. It was like I wanted to talk about my friend. I know they wanted to hear about the stories that we had, the kids. They love to hear the stories that we had that I share with them about their mom and me. And I just think it's important to keep that person's name alive. Like, yes, they're not here present physically, but like you said, that seat's not empty. We know she's here. And the empty seat is hard. I do think, I remember one year this lady I had on the podcast, they had lost a child and her husband moved in and sat in the seat where the other one used to sit, just to kind of like, we got to mix this up. It was just so painful every time they saw the empty chair. So maybe that's something. I mean, you have to figure out what's going to help you. And I love that you said be okay to say no to stuff. The holidays are already so like full of commitments that sometimes we don't always want to do. Let's keep it real. And then sometimes if there's grief added on it, then you're like, oh, I'm dreading that. It's like, okay, then say no. Like, it's okay to say no. I remember I did this reel a couple years ago where I was saying we were making cookies that day. And it was the first time my mom wasn't able to be there because of her dementia. And I said, we're still choosing to bake the cookies because that's something the kids and I want. But you know what? If that's too hard and you're someone that lost a loved one and baking the cookies is just going to be too hard, then don't bake the cookies that year. Like, it's okay to skip a tradition that you've done for 10 plus years or 20 plus years and say, you know what? It's too painful this year. In honor of her, I'm not going to do them, or in honor of her, I am going to do them. Like, either way is fine. You have to decide for you. So I made that announcement, like, in honor of her, we are going to do them. But you know what? Someone else might say, in honor of her, I can't do them. And both are okay. Both are the truth for each person. And we can't speak the truth for someone else. So grief is unique. You got to do what's best for you. But I love that permission to say no, right? Because I just don't think we feel like we can say no to things. Like, I have to be at everything. It's like, no,
Well,
what's going
and
to be good
lessen
for
the
your heart?
expectations, like we put these high expectations. I'll never forget the first Thanksgiving after, because I'm the oldest daughter, and so I tried to do all the things like my mom. And the first Thanksgiving after she passed, I remember thinking, I was staring, I had used the like Jenny O bagged turkey breast. Okay. My mom
Yes.
was like a homemade baker, would have never done that. And as I stared at these things as they were, getting bigger in the oven, I just started crying. And I said to my husband, oh my gosh, my mom would have never done this. She would just be like so disgusted that I am using these kind of turkeys and I'm not doing it all. And he put his hand on me and he just looked at me and he said, no, she wouldn't. She'd be glad that you're still getting the family together in the midst of all that's going on. And I
So
thought, you're
good.
exactly right. She doesn't care she just cares that we're still together and we're making each other a
Yes.
priority. So sometimes we put those expectations on us when really it's us, not anybody else. And so
Right.
it's okay to reevaluate and say, it's okay. Whatever I'm doing is okay, as long as I keep doing something.
Yes, I love that. And again, you probably like our moms were not going to do it like they did it as well as they did it, right? But I love that you said, "Listen, I'm still going to get the family together. You're the firstborn, so maybe they feel like you need to be the one headed up, and you're going to do it the best you can do it. And you know what? If you had to go buy something, that's still getting the family together. Like it.
Yeah.
I think people need to let go. I think give yourself grace. Give yourself grace in the grief. It doesn't have to look the same as it always has looked. And I
Right.
think that's a beautiful, someone's going to be set free by that, hearing that today, because that is important, you know? And I appreciate you sharing that story. At Mother's Day is another hard day after you've lost your mom. I remember Sophia, who's the daughter of Jeannie, said to me, everywhere I go in stores, there's signs that say, get this for your mom, get this for your mom. She goes, the holidays, you celebrate everyone. You celebrate your dad, you celebrate your brother, and you celebrate, like Christmas. But Mother's Day, you only celebrate one person. And in my life, I don't have that person. And at that time, she didn't have kids yet. She still doesn't. She's still young. But it's not like she was a mother herself. And she struggled that day. And I remember just saying, she's like, I can't even go into stores. It's everywhere.
Yep.
So how was it for you? I mean, I'm sure Mother's Day just was one of the hardest days. Can you speak to someone that maybe, I know that's not till May and this is coming out more closer to the holidays, but maybe just something that helped you for Mother's Day?
Yeah, I think the first thing was, it's okay if you're first in those mother's moments and you see other people and you're jealous, because that was another thing no one shared with me, is that grief can
Mm,
make you feel jealous, and not because you want to take what other people have, you just want it again. You just want back what you
yes.
already had. And so it's okay to feel that and then, just let it go. But also just that is a difficult day. And so it is really one of those days where you have to figure out what looks best for you. And so, what worked best for me was to try to go, like Andy Grammer always says, you should go on the offense with your grief. So, if I know it's going to be a really challenging day, then what I try to do is make somebody else smile, do something else that, I can't buy my mom a gift anymore. I can't spend time with her. So, I'm going to show up for a stranger in a really great way so that
Mm,
I can help somebody else who might be going through a hard time.
I
And
love
while
that.
that doesn't always take away, all of the ache, it does help and say, okay, this is a moment my mom would be proud of. So maybe I'm giving her this gift from heaven,
I
and
love that.
really
Yeah.
just find something that helps your soul, that self care. If you need to take that day and give yourself some self care, whether that's reading a book outside and listening to the birds, do it. It's okay. We've
Mm.
commercialized that holiday so much that I think for half of the world, it's just as painful as it is fun for the rest of the world. And when you know that, I think you can go out with more grace for the people like me that don't have that opportunity.
That's so good. And I think it's neat that you bless someone else. Like you said, you can't get her an actual gift, but I'm going to go bless someone else. And maybe there's someone that doesn't have kids, or their kids are passing. So it'd be like a beautiful way where you can go and bless, you like at a retirement home or, I don't know. I'm just throwing out
Yes.
ideas, but like there's people that are grieving the other end, like their kids can't be with them and they're a mom or. And so I think Mother's Day is a hard day all around for so many women. They've either lost a mom or they want to be a mom and they haven't had, they're still
Yes.
desiring to be a mom and it hasn't happened. So anyway, it's such a complicated day, but I love that you have a section in your book called When It's Complicated. And it's not about Mother's Day complications. It's about when you and your mom's relationship wasn't how you had wished it would be or how you had hoped it would be. And then you've lost your mom. And now it's like the grief compiled with the hurt from before. And so this wasn't your situation, but you reached out to women and asked them questions. And you have it at the end of each section, which I just thought this was so just so beautiful for those that are like, I'm not the typical grieving my mom. Like this is hard. We were estranged or we hadn't spoke and so tell me what you learned from talking to these women. Like what's something helpful that I know you had like one section in each of your books. Was there one in particular that really resonated with you?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just I wanted this book to be for anybody. And while I had a wonderful relationship with my mom, I know through friends and family that that's not always the case. And so I wanted any woman that had lost a mother to pick this book up and say, "Oh, I see myself in these words." And really just all of them are wonderful. It felt those were the most fun to write. And that sounds a little bit weird because it's a grief book, but I really felt the responsibility and the care in telling their stories with
Mm.
truth. And then writing it and sending it to them and saying, "Does this honor your path that you've shared with
Oh,
me?"
I
And them
love that.
saying, "I've never been able to say it, but you said it perfectly." Whether their mom was just absent or, kind of complicated and harsh with them, or whether she was an addict and struggled with different mental health things. I wanted all of those moms to be represented. So I can't say that I have a favorite, but just so proud that women were willing to let me write about their stories in a way
Yeah.
that is really vulnerable. Those stories are definitely for moms that had complicated relationships with their children, and to let them know more than anything, your grief matters too. There is no
Mm.
scale for grief. Grief is grief. It's hard, no matter if you had an easy relationship or a really difficult one. And so just letting them know you're here too, and we see your journey as much as my own.
That's so cool. I bet you they were so honored to have like read the words and say, "Wow, this represents me." Because maybe they didn't feel like the other things, maybe like they didn't relate to it as much, but like I can relate to this. Like this is me. This is my story. So I love that. Well, the book is beautiful. You ask on the back of the book, "What will I do without her?" And I just sat there and I think about it. I haven't actually physically lost my mom yet, but I am losing her. Her mental capacity is going. So what was my like without her? Like it's just a hard question. And I just want to close. We're going to end with a question about books. It's my favorite thing to end with, but I just want to close with one person out there listening right now, or two people. Like this is their reality. Like they've either just lost their mom or they're losing her. And what other words of encouragement can you give them? Like just to close out, like if you could speak to that, like if you're having coffee with her and I said, "I have this friend, will you talk to her?" What would you say to her? I'd love
I
just to
would
have one
say,
last, yeah.
yeah, it's hard and it's going to be hard. And I'm here for
Mm,
you however you need me. And that's going to look different on each day. And that's okay. But I'm going to keep on showing up, and I'm going to keep asking you what you need, even when you don't know. And just continue to be there for them. Just really show up
mm,
for those people who are struggling. And if you're the one struggling, know that you are going to be okay, even when you don't feel like it. And there's hope
that's
and
good.
light, and you won't see it right away, and that's okay. But it's there, and I'll keep reminding you that it's there until you see it yourself.
I love that. It's that gift of presence, where we just show up and just be there with the person. And then I love that you may not see it yet, but you will someday. And you know what? I think that's so true with hope. Hope is one of those things that's like, you can't maybe hold the hope yet, but we're going to hold it for you until you can get there and see that there is hope for your hurting heart. And I just love that. And wow, it's beautiful. All right. My favorite question to ask on the podcast, and I can't wait to hear your answer. Are you a big reader?
Oh my, I read all the time. I've started to read your book, which is wonderful. And we have
Oh,
so
thank
many,
you.
there's so many delicate, intricate details of your life that actually like coincide with mine. So
I love that. Thank you for reading mine. I love it. Well, I want to hear what books, besides the Bible, of course, because that's the best book to read, has impacted your life. And this is a hard question for book lovers. So you can say more than one, but maybe top three or however you want to do it. I know it's hard to limit them.
yeah, I loved a book that really touched me that I think about and recommend all the time is by Rabbi Steve Leader. It's called The Beauty of What Remains.
Oh,
And
I've never
it
heard of
is
that.
it is beautiful. It is just a book that obviously, he's a rabbi. I was raised Catholic. And so I thought, how is this going to translate? But he writes to everybody. And from his experience, both as losing his father and also just being a rabbi, but it is filled with so much beauty
Mm,
and just grace and compassion. It's just a wonderful read. And then on the fiction side, I just read a book called The Last Love Letter. And
mm,
what I loved about it is that it is the most realistic book of fiction on grief that I've ever read. It was just
Wow.
absolutely beautiful. But it's a fiction book, but it is kind of like a love story. And just the way she describes grief and how it impacts life, I knew that the author had experienced it herself because it's so
Mm.
realistic and
Who's the
emotional.
author?
Emma Gray, I believe.
Okay.
But yes, she's
Wow.
wonderful. I've actually messaged her on, we connected because I said,
Oh,
wow,
fun.
like this is really amazing. It's through Zibby Books, and she just has a way with words. Her second book is actually getting ready to come out, and I can't wait for it because this one was so good. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Oh, I'll have
that's
to
what we
check that out.
need. You know, when we're grieving, we need to just get out of our story and into somebody else's. And so that's one thing reading has always helped me. You know, some people do movies or working out, but for me, books have helped me kind of get some space from the heartbreak of it all.
Yeah, same for me. And I actually loved reading like some nonfiction books and hearing someone else's story. Like it didn't even have to be close to my story, but like just how God showed up for them. And like if God could show up for them in that heartbreak, then he can show up for me in my heartbreak. And it was just a way to like just feel like, okay, God, you're going to use this somehow. And I don't know yet at this point, like when I was reading these books in 2014 and 2015, and then Jeannie passed in 16. And my divorce was 14. Like I just was reading, I mean, as you can see, and I remember Laura's stories. She wrote a book called When God Doesn't Fix It. Have you ever read that one?
I have not read, I've read snippets, but I haven't read the whole thing. But
Okay.
yes, that's a
It's
powerful.
powerful book. And it's a totally different storyline. Her husband had a brain tumor and he lost his short-term memory. It was like, I didn't even have a husband. Mine was like, I mean, it couldn't be farther from my reality, but the book resonated so deeply with the truths in it because the God's part where she was sharing how God showed up for her. It was like God showing up for me. And then she'd have these truth statements and myth statements at the end. And oh, I mean, it's just
Yep.
wild how a story or a book, even if it's not exactly what you're walking through, can just bring you hope and resonate. And so I think your book's going to do that for so many that have lost their mom. And I already know I'm gifting it to a couple people that have lost their moms. And I am going to be giving a copy away on the podcast as well. It is beautiful and it's honest and truthful and raw and beautifully written. So you did a great job. Thank you for coming on
Thank you.
today and sharing your story and sharing about your book. It's been an honor to have you.
Thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation.